amount of decorum and finesse at times, but generally the idea is it's me against you. So how do we get these people to get along? And that's what I would like to hear, because it's easy to say, yes, that's what we want and that's the ideal, but I want to hear some practical solutions, practical ideas, practical thoughts as to how people are going to get these politicians who have been daggers drawn at each other. Even today you saw words being thrown, yesterday you saw words being thrown. How do we get them to get together and agree? Dr. Denise Soyafat Angus, I'm throwing it straight at you. Let's hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, short of dragging them to the table by, whomsoever, I think this is where persons have to become involved. The people have to become involved. There are persons on all sides, on both sides. Those who voted PNM, those who voted PDP, those who didn't vote, but who may have an issue right now with how it's being treated. And I think the people of Tobago have to start talking up and have to start urging those representatives that they chose that it is time enough for them to sit around the table and discuss. And if they're not going to sit around the table and discuss, then they will be punished whenever next it comes around. But they have to start sitting around and discussing. I draw reference to the fact that in Trinidad, the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition sometimes have meetings. Why aren't we having meetings as yet to determine what is going to happen? If you've had meetings, then you could come out and say, we have found a solution, or there has been a breakdown in the meetings and therefore there's no solution, and we take to the streets.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Angus. And the reason why I was so eager to touch upon your point about sitting around the table is that we just received some news. It's unconfirmed, but we would love if there are persons out there who can confirm whether this is accurate or not. We've just received some news that the 6 elected PDP members are still sitting in the chamber of the House, and they said that they are not leaving until the clerk of the House returns. So now this is not exactly the type of sitting around the table that you envisage, Dr. Angus. So let's hear your thoughts.
No, that is certainly not. And even if the clerk returns, the clerk can do nothing without having the rest of the members there. The clerk plus 6 members, that equates to nothing. So it cannot be just about the clerk returning to the House.
Okay, so let's hear Dr. Banas James on this sit-in, if this is accurate. And of course, I'm still asking that our viewers just please confirm if they can, whether this is accurate. But this is the news we've gotten, that the 6 elected PDP members are still sitting in the chamber, and they said they are not leaving until the clerk of the House returns. Dr. Banas James, what are your thoughts on this approach? I'm putting you on the spot. I'm putting you on the spot.
My advice to the people of Tobago and my advice to the 12 representatives, not 6, is represent. We elected representatives, and that has a meaning in governance. The meaning is that you go back to the people and you ask the people, well, all right, you give me 6-6. What do we do? What's the solution? That's the normal way you should govern anyway. That's the normal way you should represent. So they need to sit around the table, as Denise is saying, quite correctly, and call the people of Tobago together to discuss this issue under the full glare of the media. And let's trash it out. This is a moment when we can't think of this in kumbaya terms or utopian terms the way you are already doing. This is all about the need for us to sit down as a people and chart a way to the future. And I don't think there is anything idealistic about that. It is entirely possible for these 12 people to constitute themselves as a committee of Tobagonians elected by the people, call all of us, and let's talk and work it out. Okay. That's the way you'll get the solution.
All right, so I think without saying so, Dr. James has indicated he's not in favor of this approach. He hasn't exactly come out and said so, but I think we can read between the lines as to what he's trying to say. He prefers a more collaborative approach rather than the antagonistic way.
Well, I called it a government of national unity.
Yes, right. And that's what he's doing. I see Mr. Arthur Potts here. Mr. Potts, whenever you're ready, you will indicate when you want to answer a question. But Mr. Clyde Weatherhead, in terms of this present action that is occurring now, because I just received confirmation that it is accurate, this sit-in by the 6 PDP members, is this really conducive to all these nice, warm, fuzzy ideas we've been sharing tonight about getting together, coming together, being mature, being responsible, and, trying to work together for solutions? Does that really help? From a trade unionist perspective, tell us, is it that you always have to fight, you always have to take this antagonistic view, or is it that sometimes you have to, adapt your strategy for a more collaborative approach? Share with us your thoughts on that, Mr. Weatherhead.
Well, this is not a trade union situation. This is a political situation. And as you correctly said, Martin, our politics is structured for zero-sum outcome. Is I win or you win. So for the 12 elected people in the House of Assembly to sit down and take a different approach, it would have meant that between last week, Monday, and today, they would have made a quantum leap in terms of their own concept of the politics to say we're moving away from zero sum to focusing on what Tobago needs. And in that respect, what Vanessa is saying is they need to go back to the population, not in a contest, but going back to the population for direction. And that's why, in my own view, the fundamental thing is that Tobago needs to tell these 12 people not just how to get back into an election, but how to solve the problem of the relationship between Tobago and Trinidad, and force the parliament to sit down and talk to the people of Tobago.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Weatherhead. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, Deborah Moore-Miggins, although I think we're fairly clear as to where you would stand on this sit-in, if the pun would be pardoned. What are your thoughts on this move by the 6 members of the PDP who are sitting in the chamber and insisting they're not moving until the clerk comes back?
I hate to say so, but I think it reveals limited thinking, acknowledgement that options, your options are limited, that you're not seeing a wide enough horizon. I think there's an opportunity now for a statesman to emerge in Tobago, a statesman between either the Chief Secretary, Ansel Dennis, or Farley, whichever one would pick up that phone and say, look, Farley, let's stop pussyfooting. Let's really sit down together and see if we can bring some solution here. The time has gone. Martin says politics is an adversarial thing, and that is true. But politics, when you're tired, you can't be adversarial in that, because what the people have said is either we want both of you or we don't think any of you good enough. So somebody has to rise above that and pick up that phone and say to the other, and the person who does that, I dare say, will emerge as Tobago's statesman, Tobago's leader.
Or stateswoman, who knows?
Exactly. I want to recommend the Chief Secretary himself said we should look at other what other countries have done. And I was very shocked when I Googled this thing to see that in the United States in 2001, a similar situation developed. And in no time, they came to a power sharing agreement. And that agreement knocked out all.
Just asking everyone else to keep your microphones muted. Ms. Deborah Moore-Miggins is speaking. Sorry, yeah. Deborah, go ahead.
No problem. That agreement knocked out critical points of how they will go forward in the interim until the tie could be broken. And remember, I'm saying, as Dr. Soyafat said, we're talking about 3 to 6 months. That is going to pass in no time. And to answer Shirley, that is the idea behind getting Tobago moving. It ought to focus now on bringing out the best bill Tobago could get, so that when it is passed, we go back to the election and let the best man really win at that time.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks a lot,
Shared
Deborah.
governance in the meantime.
Yeah,
Correct. Yeah.
indeed. Now I'm seeing a question from persons on Facebook, and I would like to hear the thoughts of the the general audience on this. People are asking, should we appoint a council of elders? In other words, senior, mature, reasoned stateswomen, statesmen, past politicians, past leaders who are able to form a council of leaders who can give some guidance and direction to the persons in this scenario. I've seen names crop up. Some people have suggested you, Miss Deborah Moore-McGinn. Some have suggested you, Dr. Vanas James. Some have mentioned you, Miss Denise Soyafat Angus. Clyde, because you're not a Tobagoan and I didn't see your name come up, but I'm sure they're thinking of you. All right. But the point is, apart from that, you have persons like Reginald Dumas. Some persons have mentioned Ho Choi Charles, notwithstanding people's previous or prior political persuasions, they may have some kind of input that they can give that can form some kind of consensus. Is that a valid idea? Is that something that can fly? I'd like to hear from persons in the general audience. I saw Mr. Arthur Potts was agitating, I think, to be heard. Mr. Potts, are you there? Are you willing to help us with the answers to this question? Arthur Potts, are you there? Okay, if Mr. Potts is not ready, let's hear from, is there someone else in the general audience who wants to take the lead on helping us to answer that? Mr. Jimmy Toussaint, will you give us the lead off on your answer to that? Mr. Toussaint, are you willing to contribute there?
Sorry, you just caught me by surprise. I'll get myself involved for the next question. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. All right, sure. No problem. All right. So you'll ready yourself for the next question.
Yeah. Good
All
night.
right, Mr. Potts, you're here with us. Yes.
Yeah. I'm very much interested in the suggestion made by Deborah just now. That one with that where these guys need to be a statesman and somebody needs to get up and call each other and sit down and have that conversation. I think Tobago is the one that is going to be either gaining or losing here. And this amount of standoff and not meeting and trying to come up to a solution. I said because what is we have 6 and we have 6. And therefore it is not a PNM or PDP thing now, it's a Tobago thing. And therefore they need to sit down, and even if it has to be power sharing, somebody decide that they're gonna go for 2 years and then they're gonna switch over for 2 years. But about time that we get to some level of balance between them and determine that Tobago needs to be considered first. But right now we have to be concerned with who controls who. Because whereas the PDP might be sitting in the chamber, all 6 of them, and they might be making their own decisions, the question is who really advise the other side, and where the advice coming from? Is it that the other side could sit and really make decisions on their own, or do they have to keep searching to someone else to tell them what to do? Because if I figure that's part of the problem I think we might be having. Because if we have two groups of people in there who really could make decisions for themselves on their own for Tobago, I think we might have probably had a decision already. But I think we're having a problem with that.
Okay, all right, great. Thanks a lot, Dr. Potts. Okay, so Clive, let's hear you on this one now. Dr. Potts is making a suggestion here of 2 years for one side, 2 years for the other side. Is that really practical, workable, or even realistic in the circumstances? Could that ever be a possible solution? Because I've seen lots of persons in the public space talk about that idea, that power sharing idea, in terms of a musical chairs type of scenario. This time is your turn, next time is your turn. So let's hear you, Mr. Clive Weatherhead, on that idea. Is that practical?
Well, that can only work if all 12 agree on a program to be executed over the entire period of their being in the assembly. If they don't have a unity of thinking on what is the program for Tobago, they can never operate that kind of system where one is going to implement it for half the time and the other is going to implement it for the other half. They
But
have
not
to
just
agree on what is needed.
There's also the question, if I am there sitting occupying the chair for 2 years and I get comfortable and cozy in that chair, when your time approaches, am I really inclined to give it up? You know, given the nature of politicians, that's a question. So let's hear Dr. Angus on that.
Well, has somebody who sat there for a year now become cozy as well?
No comment on that.
I think it could be a bit disruptive. Like you say, development is not something that occurs abruptly within 2 years. And, you know, even 4 years sometimes is a short period. So I think you would want to see a balanced approach in terms of development, and therefore everyone must be on the same page from the start. And I believe that, again, in this interim period, to me, the quick fix is to have a shared governance approach where both of them are around the table at the same time, agreeing on what happens over the next 6 to 9 months, making it happen while they champion the issue of the autonomy bill and they work out, what exactly that they want from it. But again, it begins with having a conversation with each other.
Okay, thank you. All right, Deborah, your thoughts. 2 years for you, 2 years for me, but I get in my 2 years first because I'm not sure if I give you the 2 years first that I will ever get my 2 years. I could just see how this is
for the same reason.
Politicians.
For that reason, I don't agree. And thank God I maintain that it will not be 2 years because Tobago will not be waiting 2 years to get the autonomy bill. Remember, when the autonomy bill is made law, there must be an election to. Remember, when the autonomy bill is made law, there must be an election to underpin what we have passed. So, and we're not going to wait 2 years. It's going to come in 6, I say a year, but even that.
6 to 9 months.
So it's not going to be long. And the person who suggested the Council of Elders, it's like the mediation. And I heard Dr. Remy speak about it. I think that is a very good idea. We first have to get over the presiding officer issue, which begins with the phone call or the conversation, as Dr. Surfat says. And of course, this situation will need guidance. It will need some sort of advisory thing. And if it's not mediators, it could be called the Council of Elders. Because I don't think any policies should be implemented during this 6 months period. What we're focusing on is getting the best autonomy bill possible. And when we get that, we make that into law, then we go to the polls. And after that, we get cracking on whatever agenda, which side thinks it's agenda.
Okay, great. All right, thanks a lot, Ms. Deborah Moore-Miggins. Dr. James, 2 years for me, 2 years for you, but I know you will say Farley must get his 2 years first. So let's hear your thoughts on that. Is that possible?
No, I don't think that will work in any event. I don't, and it overlooks the fundamental issue, which is that all you're talking there is about 2 executive regimes. The problem of the THA Act and the problem of governance in Tobago is exactly that. So we need to fix the problem, and that is to create a type of government which allows for democracy to reign. That is only possible if we create the oversight component in our governance. Whether you have an elected chief secretary by himself or not, as you see in the American system or in the British system, the critical element that distinguishes both of those systems from everything we're practicing in Tobago and across the region, and in the country for that matter, is the presence of an oversight mechanism, a mechanism that oversees the work of the executive. In Britain, you have it. In the US, you have it. We need it here in Tobago to facilitate democracy. That is the way you will fix the problem, not by sharing powers 2 year in 2 year blocks.
Okay, all right, thanks a lot, Dr. Vanas James. All right, so that brings us to a nice, interesting question. In other words, if we are thinking about amending the THA Act, amending the Constitution to facilitate the needs of Tobago, should Tobago consider moving to a bicameral system of legislature? So in other words, like in the Trinidad Parliament, where you have the House of Representatives and you have the Senate, whereby you also have the independent senators who are able to bring some balance to the equation. If you have the two sides at war, you may have the independent senators who may tip the balance one way or the other. Should we also think of that instead of the unicameral system that we have now? We have a unicameral system currently existing in the THA. Should we move to a bicameral system? Let's hear Dr. Maria Dillon Remy on that. Maria?
Yes, hi. I want us to really be, in other words, be at a position talking about things that are immediately before us before we talk about that. Because that bicameral, unicameral system is later on. The bill that is in Parliament now, as far as I understand it, it does provide another, in other words, the elected, and it does provide for people that are selected, I said, I understood it, by parishes, so that you have another oversight to the elected people. But there's a question as to whether we need that. But that is for the future. What I wanted to mention is that we are in January. In June this year, the THA has to provide a budget to the government. Who is going to be doing this? And so my understanding is that this, either sitting at the table, agreeing on where we go forward, is closer than, it has to be done within the next couple months. There is an issue coming up.
Okay.
A budget has to be debated, and there's no parliament to debate, there's no assembly to debate it.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dr. Remy. All right, so just quickly, Clyde, your thoughts on unicameral, bicameral, and of course, Dr. Remy is saying, look, forget about those are issues for the future, deal with the immediate issues.
You know, the original THA was bicameral. And in this bill, we were told that there was widespread consultation, and there's this notion of the People's House as a bicameral institution. So if what is in the bill actually came out of consultation with the people of Tobago, are we saying that what is in the bill is what the people of Tobago want? And if that is the case, who is the government or the opposition who will require to present that special majority? Who are they to stand in the way of what the people of Tobago want?
Right, but you see, the thing is, okay, let's just be clear on that. Remember, now this present bill, which the current government is promoting, this is different from the previous bill, which I think when the UNC were in power, they had their own draft bill, and they keep saying that their bill is the better bill. The PNM says their bill is the bill that represents the will of the people of Tobago. So at the end of the day, it requires, even at the level of the national parliament, some degree of maturity and people coming together and saying, hey, look, let's put our differences aside if we want to advance the needs of the people of Tobago. But that has not happened. Each time you have one.
That is my view, and that this situation doesn't only create the opportunity in Tobago for that kind of maturity, it is a national governance issue.
That's the point. It is.
The parliament too has to have that maturity.
Right, and that's the thing. We have to call upon them to ensure that they also exercise that maturity. So while it's all well and good to say, look, in Tobago, we want you all to be mature and come together, we also need the leaders in the national parliament to exercise that kind of maturity. Otherwise, we will never get any of those autonomy bills or all those nice ideas that we want to be passed. That will never happen. Okay, so just another question that has cropped up, and this one is a nice hot topic. It's been put out there now that because the PNM has chosen to change their nominee for presiding officer, it's been posited by some in the PDP camp that they have not followed the proper or accurate procedure. And as a result, there's now only one nominee for presiding officer. So therefore, they want the clerk of the House to come back out and to reconvene and have both sides there. And with only one nominee, being the PDP nominee, they would want a vote to be taken in relation to that. Now, that's what I'm seeing being put out there, that the PDP camp is now saying that by changing their nominee, the PNM did not follow the proper procedure, and that as a result, there's only one man left standing, so to speak. You know, as in wrestling, you have the all-out fight and one left standing. So they're saying that only the PDP nominee is left standing. So as a result, they're saying that their candidate should therefore become the presiding officer. Dr. Soifat Angus, your thoughts on that? And the question is, would Tobagonians as a whole accept that as a valid means of nominating a presiding officer, something that is so important and so contentious in this scenario?
I had the opportunity to witness the suggestion of a nomination. And what I saw is the Assemblyman Davidson Celestine stand up and say to the clerk, well, we would like to nominate someone else for presiding officer. And the clerk's response was, the House is now, I'm not sure if she used the word suspended or adjourned, but the House is now suspended or adjourned until Thursday. So I don't even think the statement was acknowledged. So they didn't put forward a name. They didn't say we would like to withdraw our, our previous nomination. Certainly no name was proffered. So I don't consider that that was a valid statement or nomination in that moment. And it definitely was not acknowledged by the clerk.
Okay, so as far as you see it, the issue does not arise at all?
No,
okay.
Because there's a process for nomination. And you would have to put forward a name. You'd have to state that you're withdrawing the other one and you're putting forward a name. That was not done.
Okay, all right. So a question has arisen from Facebook viewers. The question of the persons who are continuing in office as secretaries. What's your view on that? Should they be allowed to continue? Now, we know what Section 36 of the Act says. Section 36 is the holdover provision, which really was geared to allow persons in the interregnum. So in other words, between the calling of elections and the installation of a new assembly, it preserved those positions of secretary and assistant secretary, chief secretary, deputy chief secretary, so that way you can have some stability, some continuity of governance. Now that you have a scenario where some persons did not even offer themselves for election, did not win their seats, are definitely not members of the assembly, persons are asking questions, and we saw Mr. Ansel Dennis make a very strident call that, look, those persons should offer their resignations. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Banas James?
Well, I think good governance speaks clearly to what should happen. In the end, they cannot be accountable to themselves. They have to be accountable and responsible to an assembly. So there should be no holdover, in my view, beyond what you're describing as the interregnum. If we can't get past this issue, let's go back to the polls. But this business of them holding over in perpetuity is completely undemocratic, because they'll be governing without being responsible to any assembly whatsoever. And that's the worst. That's the worst possible outcome for Tobago.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, Ms. Deborah Moore-Miggins, your thoughts on that? And persons are saying that, it's a situation that can lend itself to abuse if it is that the incumbents simply remain in office for an extended period while, basically fiddling while Rome burns.
Well, I think that issue is a no-brainer. Clearly, those people cannot, ought not, should not remain in office. As Vanna said, you have to be accountable. This is a legal accountability here, and I think that ought not to be countenanced at all.
Okay, all right, great, thanks a lot. And Mr. Weatherhead. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, at this point in time, that notion that Mr. Dennis said he's asking people to resign, that is just fluff, because those who did not contest the election had no interest in being an assemblyman, and those who lost have no authority to be an assemblyman and therefore to be a secretary. So they should all simply be removed by him. He has that power as the chief secretary to say, I am asking that this person be removed. And he
Yes,
should.
it's clear under the act that he can simply inform the president that he's asking for their appointments to be revoked. But I think maybe he has
If
tried.
he can appoint, he can disappoint.
Right. So I think maybe he has tried the diplomatic route first, and let's see the response from the individuals. Right. So,
Martin,
yes,
just
Denise, let's
to
hear you.
interject.
So,
You know, I do have concerns with the mere fact that you have persons now managing mega divisions, and therefore how much oversight you can have at that level. I mean, when you look at a large division like infrastructure being matched with finance, community development with education, you know, and some of these other combinations they came up with, you ask yourself, how much oversight will there be? But I think this is also an opportunity, because with the coming of the greater autonomy, we have to also strengthen our public service. And therefore, this also is a test for public servants, for them also to understand that their role in participating in the protection and advancement of Tobago's future is also critical at this point.
okay,
Especially
great.
where there's no oversight within the legislative body.
Okay, all right, okay, great. So now just another angle that we're getting, and this is from someone, one of our Facebook viewers from the US. This person says they were concerned about how, you know, secure and sanitized the EBC's voter list is. They said that they've been living in the USA for the past 23 years continuously, and yet they are still on the list and they are still able to vote if they chose to do so. So they're questioning the integrity of the voters list by which Tobagonians vote. Now, it's not something that you've heard people challenge or raise issues about, you know, much in the past. So I would just like to ask members of our panel from your knowledge, and I would start with Dr. Vanas James, because I know you are somebody you've been intimately involved in this aspect of elections. Is there any question to your mind as to the integrity of the voters list for Tobago for the THA elections?
Well, all lists will tend to have a flaw here and there. But as a general matter, and being practically involved in these last two sets of elections, I didn't see enough in the canvassing process to make me very concerned about the integrity of the list.
Okay, all right, great. Dr. Soifat Angus, your thoughts on this?
I think having 2 weeks going into an election, I didn't have enough time to do any extensive verification exercises. I hope the next time I'll have more time.
Okay, all right. Clive, we'll probably give you a pass on this one and pivot to Ms. Deborah Moore-Miggins.
I can tell you, Martin, that my experience as a candidate in Trinidad in 2007 and having been involved in elections in 2010 and 2015, I see no reason for anybody in Trinidad and Tobago to raise these issues about EBC and Tiffin election and all these kind of stories.
Okay, great. And Ms. Deborah Moore-Miggins, your thoughts on this?
I have no concern in that area at all. That is not
okay.
critical.
All right. Okay. So at least that's one thing we all agreed on, that in terms of the integrity and sanctity of our electoral process, we are all satisfied that it's intact. And it's important for persons to know that and understand that, because you see what has happened in the USA, where you have so many millions of persons believing with not a shred of evidence that the election was stolen from Mr. Trump, and believing that, you know, people tampered with this, they tampered with that, and all sorts of conspiracy theories. You see the QAnon QAnon theory going around and all the QAnon followers, and they believe in all sorts of strange things. So we, I think, as responsible, mature leaders in the society, we have a duty once we know that, look, there's absolutely no basis for questioning or raising any issue, because I think our EBC has really done a phenomenal job over the years in terms of their impartiality, and we must ensure that we give them that support in terms of the integrity of their process and making sure that we communicate that clearly to the public so that we don't have any wild, outlandish theories going around in terms of that. All right, so I know that we have all these questions from persons on Facebook. Is there anyone in the audience? Mr. Sylvester, Jimmy Sylvester, are you there or are you still gun shy? Mr. Jimmy Toussaint. Mr. Toussaint?
I am still here, but I'm just listening in right now.
Okay, all right, great. All right, thanks. So reminding our viewers and our listeners, you can type your questions, or if you are live, you can also raise your hand and indicate any question that you have in relation to this matter. Okay, so let's just look at the current scenario that we have. We have the scenario where the persons are sitting in the House right now, the 6 members. Where does that lead us? In other words, is that facilitative of collaboration, coming together, maturity, and being able to find some kind of consensus? Or is that taking us down the antagonistic path whereby the parties are going to both dig their heels in, and we will end up with this scenario dragging on interminably? And what is the role of the Prime Minister and the National Parliament in bringing about a resolution? In other words, we all would like to hope and wish that the maturity would emerge from amongst our 12 members. But if it does not happen, where does that lead us? And who is to take the step to say, well, look, I'm going to bell the cat and make the move to make some progress here? All right, so we would like our viewers also to chime in on this, and I see Mr. Brendan Gray is pumping at the bit. He wants to be heard. Let's hear you.
No. It's just I'm interested in the conversation. There are 2 things I would want to say. As you rightfully raised the point, where the leaders, the national leaders, to bring some resolution to this, including the president. What role can she play in this effort? And to pointing us into a direction that is reasonable. And secondly, we spoke earlier about how to bring some resolution to this matter. We speak about gentlemen, and we spoke about the elder group, but we didn't conclude it to say, well, what is the preferable route that we should take in trying to resolve this? This would be our view on the matter. I think we could conclude and say our view out of all the situations that were presented, we prefer this one or that one, or 2 or 3 as the case might be. And I would want to advance that the solution of the elder committee coming together and calling the groups together, if they would like to come together and try to help resolve this matter in the interest of Tobago. And the names you've called are real sound names, and I would advocate that they should be called on to come together and have this thing, because it's all our interest. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brendan Gray. I see Mr. Sean Ned online. Mr. Ned, are you willing to ask a question or answer the question?
Yes, can you hear me? Good night,
yes,
everyone. Yes, good night, everyone. I appreciate this panel. I am the chair of the PDP. I had just 2 points to make. There are at least 2 directions in which the PDP wishes to deal with this impasse of the presiding officer. The first one is in pursuit of the law, the rules, the acts, as many guests have been speaking to very well. And I'm not going to add to that. It has led us to this setting where we are still in the house and we are sitting in. That is the route of forcing the clerk to deal with this issue ad nauseum. All right, so we are at that point. The second point is in negotiations, and there seems to be in this discussion the idea that, and I know everyone is being diplomatic in the way how they're approaching this. However, the PDP has always attempted to negotiate throughout its time, and it's constantly doing that now to attempt to come to some kind of conclusion to this matter. However, you have a what seems to be a constant denial of our efforts to negotiate. And you see that in the comments even by the Prime Minister, who is the head political leader of the PNM, who doesn't want to have any kumbaya moment, right? So a question I would have is generally, if the Tobago branch is actually being restricted by their Trinidad main branch, and if so, what can actually be done about such a Trinidad party interest and the continued unwillingness of what it seems to us to be the PNM to actually work with the PDP and demonstrated in the last 4 years as we attempted this to deal with this particular issue.
Okay, all right, okay. So, Mr. Ned, all right. So now you've raised a perspective from the PDP's standpoint, but you would have been hearing our panelists previously, and even Dr. Maria Dillon Ramey, who had touched upon the issue. You've heard their views on this. It does not seem that persons like Ms. Deborah Moore Miggins are in approval of the stance taken by the PDP in terms of this current sit-in. So, Ms. Deborah Moore Miggins, can you share your ideas again with Mr. Ned as to why you don't think that this is the best approach, this current sit-in, basically trying to force a scenario?
Yeah, basically, I am saying that there's another way. There's another way that brings out committee and exchange and dialogue among us. We're all Tobagonians, we claim, and we all clannish, they claim. So let's use it for perfect good. I think a phone call, one to the other in all good faith, saying, look, we've considered this thing and we think that we can benefit from us coming together and talking. We can't be 50,000 people living in this place, and we can't find one person on whom we can agree that we can say, look, we have settled the issue of the presiding officer. We have both agreed to support X to be the presiding officer. As I said, it would not be for a very long time, because what we're going to be focusing on over the next 3 months or so is getting the best bill out for Tobago. That is our main focus. And I think that could pave the way.
Okay, all right. I just received some breaking news that the PDP, they have gathered their forces and they have left the house. They have decided to fight another day, so to speak.
Or
all
another
right?
way.
Or another, well, let's hope it's another way. Very good point.
They have been listening to you. They have been listening to us.
Yes. All right, so Dr. Angus, your thoughts on this. What did the PDP achieve by this sit-in? And in other words, from a strategic and tactical standpoint, have they gained anything or have they lost some moral ground by their actions and then having to retreat?
I think you can say both, because I think persons are recognizing that the time for conversation is now, and that those who are sitting on the fringes, who are looking on, it is time for all of us to get involved in helping these two groups of persons get back on the right track, which is to say that they are fighting for Tobago, and that's why they got into politics. And therefore, we have a responsibility to somehow get them to sit around the table and begin conversations with each other. I want to focus on the fact that persons are wondering whether the president could get involved. In the Tobago House of Assembly Act, the role of the president is very clear. The role of the president is to swear in the assemblyman, to appoint a minority leader, and after the House elects the deputy, the chief secretary and the deputy chief secretary, to swear them in. So the president does not have a role in determining whether we have a presiding officer or who should be in governance. In Trinidad, the president has that role, but not in Tobago. But notwithstanding that, you know, the fact that we are thinking somehow Trinidad and Parliament should bail us out of it sends the message that we are not ready for greater autonomy. If we allow them to take over and make come up with a solution for us, it is sending a clear message to everyone in Tobago and outside of Tobago that we are not ready for greater autonomy. I believe that this is a test of our readiness, and we have to determine that we are going to pass it. And it is not just those sitting in the houses, in the House right now, the two parties who need to pass it, but all of us in Tobago need to see ourselves as a part of what is to occur if we are to pass this examination for receiving greater autonomy.
Okay, all right. Dr. Barnes James, what did the PDP achieve by this sit-in tonight and their subsequent retreat?
I guess to some extent they have made the point to the country, surely to Tobagonians, that they really want to get a solution to the problem. I don't think they've achieved much more than that. And I also don't think they have burnt down any bridges in that sense. There is still the possibility that they could take a very mature approach to resolving this problem, do what, roughly speaking, what everybody has been saying tonight, and make a proper approach to the PNM, whatever proper means here, phone call, letter, whatever, and ignore the nonsense the Prime Minister is talking about Kumbaya and so on, and say, look, we have a moment here. This is a historical moment. 6-6 tells us that. Let us see how we could sort this out on behalf of the people of Tobago. And I agree with the general principle that we should bring the other people in Tobago into the discussion to clarify where we go from here. What you call the elders, but all senior Tobagonians generally.
Okay, all right, great. I think if it's one thing we can take away from this meeting tonight, I think there's really the general consensus that we must set up that council of elders and have these persons as in an overall steering committee to give guidance. Persons who will give it impartially and without, you know, any political bias or any rose-colored glasses being on their eyes in terms of their vision. All right, so just now we have Mr. Ryan Allard who wanted to ask a question or make a comment. Mr. Allard, are you there? Could you put on your camera? Could you put on your microphone? Mr. Allard, going once, going twice. Okay, we have Mr. Stephen Shepard who wants to ask a question or make a comment.
Sir, I want to strongly support the point that Dr. Angus made a while ago, that this is an opportunity ready-made for Tobago. And if we allow Trinidad to make the decision for us, we could be in the wilderness for another 40 years. The Council of Elders is a brilliant idea. Our ancestors have used that for thousands of years in Africa. It has worked, it has avoided conflict until the white men came. We should consider it. And the points made by Deborah Mormigans about the talking, it will be a display of maturity. And I really think we should make the decisions here. The Council of Elders will guide, and it shouldn't just be for now, that should be ongoing. But the present situation requires mature discourse. I could see no other sensible way out. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shepard. Enjoy Australia. It looks like you're in a different time zone from the rest of us. All right, but notwithstanding that, Mr. Allard, are you there? Are you back?
Technology.
Yes, I know. I'm just being facetious.
No. We played golf on yesterday, so he's right here today.
I know. It's just I was complimenting him on his background. It's quite nice. Yes. Mr. Allard, are you there with your question? Okay, all right, so he's not. All right, okay, so the Council of Elders. Okay, so let's talk business, all right? Clyde, I know you would qualify for the elder part, but as I said, you're not Tobagonian, so I'm not sure that they would put you in. Brendan, definitely you would be among the elders. You qualify from an age perspective. All right, but let's toss around ideas. Let's see names. Who would we want to see on this Council of Elders? Because it seems to be one idea that we are all agreed on, that there should be this Council of Elders. I would think persons like Reginald Dumas definitely, would definitely be there. Ho Choi Charles, I know sometimes some people have strong views one way or the other, but at the end of the day, his passion for Tobago could never be denied, regardless of which side of the political divide you're on. You can't deny that he has a passion for Tobago. Who would be some other names that we would see as respected persons who can form this Council of Elders that can guide and lead Tobago forward? Maybe persons like Mr. Raymond Otley. I don't know. I'm just tossing out names. I would like to hear from the panelists and from members of the public. Who would you want to see on this? I'm seeing somebody saying Eastland McKenzie, Dr. Eastland McKenzie. I'm seeing Stanley Beard. Okay, so let's hear some other names. Who would we want to see form? I mean, I think it should be no more than about 13 people, because you don't want it too big, you don't want it too cumbersome, because the bigger it gets, the more difficult it is to manage. But let's hear some names of persons whom we respect and whom we would want to give that authority and that mandate to say, well, look, yes, we would like you guys to come together, and both parties, you see, and that's the thing, both parties have to buy into this. So we must get both leaders to agree, and both prospective, chief secretary aspirants to agree that, look, you are going to be bound by whatever decisions or rulings on these particular issues. So you said, say maybe 4 or 5 specific issues. Okay, how are we going to choose the presiding officer in this current imbroglio? How are we then going to ensure that the chief secretary's position when chosen is respected by the other side? So in other words, there will be a winner, there will be a loser, but at the end of the day, we want to ensure that there's continuity of governance. How do we fix this going forward? So these are the things, all right? So I'm seeing persons mentioning Dr. James and stuff like that.
Can I make a suggestion here, Martin?
Yes.
We can have both parties select a certain number of persons, and then we have another set of numbers, but the party's selection must not override the other selection, other members of the 13. So this
okay,
13,
but Brendan, the minute you go into the political parties having a say in this, I think you're running into problems. But
no, let me finish.
Just so Brendan, the issue is that we are actually running out of time. We've had, the discussion has been so lively and so engaging and so enticing and exciting and enlightening to all of us who are gathered here. It is something that is going to engage us for much more time. But we have to begin to wrap up, because the host is indicating to us, and the CivilNet organization, we thank them for putting this on, and we can mull on those ideas, and I guess at a later session on some other day, we can come up with some more concrete suggestions as to the Council of Elders. But I think coming out of tonight's discussion, if there's one positive takeaway, is that I think most people here are all agreed that there should be the establishment of that Council of Elders as a first step to leading us out of this debacle. We thank you all panelists. We thank you for your time. We thank all those who contributed. We thank you for all those who viewed on Facebook, all the listeners, all those who came in with questions. We thank you even for all the persons in the wider diaspora. Even we had viewers from the US and all over. So we thank you all for participating, because at the end of the day, regardless of what divides us politically, there's one thing that unites us all, and that's our love for Tobago. Let's make sure we put that at the forefront as we say good night and thank you all.